Hi everyone, welcome back to the video. This is the third video in the series of where we're rating the Imperium Row cards. And we'll be talking about the 6 cost cards this time. There are not too many of them, so maybe I'll talk about them in a little bit more detail. I hope you enjoy this. So once again, I think we'll talk about the tier list. So mainly focus on tiers S to B because all these cards are good. You kind of want to have them in your deck, and you don't never hate to have any of them. Okay, so S tier is awesome, super great. Whereas B tier is like, okay, I'm quite happy to have it in my deck, but I don't feel too strongly about it. So first card on that we'll talk about is Worm Riders. So for Worm Riders, I think when you look at this card, you're like, do you like swords? Do you like 4 swords? Well, most people do. The on reveal gives you 4 swords, assuming you have the friendship, and 6 swords assuming you have the alliance. So the on play effect is relevant, the 2 spies, and is quite flexible as well. I think one thing about this card is that you generally want to have at least 1 space in the firmament before acquiring this card, or you want to have a pathway to at least the friendship. If not, this card can feel a bit limiting. So one thing I want to do is I want to compare this card to Gun Doctor. So Gun Doctor and Worm Rider are actually very similar in a lot of ways. So they both don't provide persuasion, they have similar access. And so between the two, you think like, okay, Gun Doctor actually plays out for about 5 swords because you get to put an additional troop in. So like being able to commit to combat without going to a space also is very powerful. So you put in 5 swords versus Worm Riders 4 or 6 swords. So actually in terms of swords, they are similar. And Worm Riders can feel a lot more limiting because you do need a friendship. I have multiple cases where I have this card, but I don't have the friendship, and I don't have an optimal way of getting the friendship. As such, I end up just playing it on play, not because I don't want the swords, but because if not, it's a dead card in hand. So, but between the two, I think Worm Riders is a better card, and I will definitely pick up Worm Riders over Gun Doctor. But it doesn't mean that I'm a lot happier to have Worm Riders in my deck. Okay, moving on to the next card, we have Reverend Mother Moheim. So this card has the most insane and awful feeling when someone plays it against you. You discard 2 cards. But where do I start with this card? So if you can get this combo off right, it will deny other players of buying Spice of Flows potentially, and also it will prevent them from having their very powerful buys. Let's say if they're buying a Chome Dictatorship or something, or they're trying to. However, the timing of it is a bit awkward. You have to play it on your second card, and by then they might have already revealed. So one thing about it is that when you buy this card early, you'll find yourself actually not being able to trigger the combo off. As such, you'll either use it to just reveal for spice or use it just for the faction access without getting the on-play effect off. And that's how you should value this card. You should value this card as a 2 precision, 2 spice card, which has Emperor and Bene Gesserit access. Decent access, but without proper support, right, it sits on a B tier, but with the support it goes to maybe a high A tier. So one issue when playing this card, right, is that when you play this card around 6 to 8, I think that's the most reliable time you'll get this card off. And one thing about it is that because you have to play it as your second card, very often in those rounds, selective breeding is a very popular space because it enables Spice Must Flows buys. So you'll be often left with Conspire, Wealth, and Secrets, of which Secret is probably the best, but also it can be blocked. So though the effect is powerful and it is a faction access, the board space that you're going for is weak, and if it doesn't further your alliance or your friendship, right, it can be quite a dead on play card space. So that's one thing to note when playing this card. That's why I think it sits at where it's at. But with support it goes up to A. Next on the list is Guild Accord. So Guild Accord allows you to go to Highliner for cheaper. So combats are very often dictated by Highliner. I think especially in this current meta, people are going to Highliner more, especially between rounds 4 to 7. It doesn't necessarily win you the combat, but one thing is that Guild Accord makes Highliner a very good space. So for 6 spice it is okay, but for 4 spice it is great. So, but when you don't have the spice right and you happen to draw into this card, it can feel very terrible, especially without the Alliance. You're revealing it for essentially a water, which is most of the time bad. I mean, sure, you can get Water Peddler and feel great about it, but Water Peddler is a 1-cost card. So this is one of those cards that doesn't necessarily win you the Alliance as well, as you are going up the spacing track very fairly. What I mean by that is that every time you draw this card, maybe you'll get 1 influence, right? And eventually you will climb, but that climb is very methodical and very slow, right? Compared to someone with shipping or someone with other ways to go up bumps, is not necessarily very fast as well. So the Alliance is not guaranteed. You definitely won't hate having this card, but I don't think you are actually over the moon to have this card as well. Overall, it is good because of how the game is warped around Highliners in the later turns, but in the Rise of X, it doesn't necessarily win you the game. So the next card I want to talk about is Treachery. So Treachery sits on the A tier. So most of the time when players buy this card, they try to cycle it a few times before deploying it to steal or obtain the Alliance or to get a friendship. So one thing to compare this card to is Power Play. Power Play is a 5-cost card. You can view my breakdown of it in the 5-cost card tier list. However, the difference between the two is that with Treachery you can actually time the ability of the card, meaning that you can choose when you want to play it to be the most efficient and the most effective to steal an Alliance or to get the points that you need. Okay, when you draw a Power Play, right, you are almost inclined to play it, because if not, it sits in your hand as a dead card. So when you draw a Power Play, you'll play the Power Play, but when you draw the Treachery, you can choose whether you want to play it now or to do it later, and in some circumstances be able to offload it, unload it as well. So this card feels good when you keep it in hand, it feels good when you slam it down on the table and steal an Alliance. This is Power Play on steroids, and sign me up for it. A tier. So we'll move on to the S tier, and in the S tier we have Opulence. So this card has faction access and potentially grants you points. Sign me up. This is a great win condition, and win conditions are very rare in this game. So the cost isn't free, but it is fairly manageable, especially if you have some access to shipping. I think shipping down for Solari is probably the easiest way to get Solari. So if you do get this card early, do go to Wealth early. I think getting a bump and getting the Solari you need to fund this card is important. I think very often people fall into the traps of cashing in this card too early. If you buy early enough, you definitely will see it again. And you need Solari for a lot of things in this game. So the best 6-cost card to me actually is Gurney Helen. So this card has no faction bumps, no access, no victory points, but it sits on the top of the 6-cost card tier list. So why? It's because that's how powerful the on-play effect is. 2 troops and draw a card, that's almost an additional full action. Putting 5 troops into combat on a city space is madness. Similar to a powered up ring ability of the beast, this card can make combats feel very out of reach to other players. When you put in 5 troops and they are looking at it and it's like, okay, is it worth committing this amount of troops? Okay, the draw effect of this card, right, is relevant. Okay, one reason this card is so good is that when you play this card, right, it kind of draws into itself more. And when you buy it early enough, right, you shouldn't be surprised if you ended up drawing it 3 rounds in a row, and everyone will start to hate you, and you just win these 3 combats and wipe the field with the resources that you generate or the points that you got from it. That's how powerful this card can feel. So Gurney Halleck, S tier. So with that, we've come to the end of the 6 cost card tier list. I think after this, we'll be moving up to the 7 and 8 costs. We'll do those together because there are not too many of them as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the next part.